do that. I am now recording. I have to say that out loud almost, you guys. I am poking around on the back screen here because I want to show you guys. Actually, I'm going to share the thyroid document in the Facebook group right now so that I don't forget to post this for you guys. If you have not located it in the Mentorship and Mastery file, I'm going to put it where you guys can find it really easily. So hold on just a second and we're going to get started. Let's see here. So, all right, I'm pasting a Dropbox link for you guys. And this Dropbox link is going to give you access to the thyroid guide and just kind of a video demo, just kind of a reminder of, you know, what this is about. And then I'm going to be trying to post the videos in this Dropbox as well. So it's all kind of in one place. All right, so it's been posted. How's everybody doing? Can you hear me okay? Everyone hear me all right? Throw me a, yep, awesome. Okay, so this is going to be a repeat for some of you that took the Coaching with Confidence course last fall, but it is going to be not so fast forward because I remember, you know, when we talked about it, and thanks you guys, I appreciate it. When we talked about the class, yeah, and Mary Louise says you can never repeat it too often. You can't, because if you are new to this thyroid guide in this class, you're in for a treat. And I know I call it the layman's version of the endocrine system and the thyroid, but it really, I think I take it a lot deeper than that. I must, because I've had people ask me to reteach it multiple times because the first time around was like mind-blowing information. And so I'm hoping that you can see this as high value and high mileage as I see it, and at the same time get a better grasp and an idea of what this is all about. Okay, so let me pull the I'm going to pull the guide up, and then I'm going to make sure you guys can see it. I'll do a screen share. And Kathy, I know that I sent you information about, or sent you question about whether you want to work for me and do some things for me, and I got that. You are interested, and I will get back with you after we do this particular class. I'm going to send you an email. Hold on a minute, you guys, sorry. It just kind of disappeared on me. Where did you go? Hold on a minute. I've got, the problem is, there we go. Okay. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Let me know when you see it. You should see the front page of the thyroid guide. And I'm going to check and make sure you guys are good. So someone give me a heads up. Kathy, can you see that? It is a neck, and I'm scrolling. Yes, perfect. Okay. So let's keep questions in the Q&A box today, just because that way I don't have to pull the chat down. I do have my double monitor up in case you accidentally put it in the chat. It's okay. I mean, don't worry about it. It's just be easier for me to glance up every now and then and ask questions. I mean, answer questions. So let me do a little bit of a fuller screen here. I can't do the entire screen because I still haven't learned how to access all my stuff at the bottom when I do that. All right, Thyroid 101, a beginner's guide to understanding the thyroid, is not a customizable document. One of the reasons I did not make this a customizable document for you to give to your clients is because of the amount of medical terminology, you know, wording in here that might make some of you uncomfortable. I didn't want to be somebody that delivered that kind of information for you to share with your clients and make you worry, because this is a lot of medical information, a lot of terminology. Even though I'm quoting and I'm using resources, I just felt a little bit uncomfortable about handing this over and saying, make this your own, and then you guys going out and putting it out there and then worrying about whether or not you did the right or wrong thing in some instances with verbal, you know, language and stuff like that. So that's why it's just kind of stayed a document for you to use as a guide to work with your clients. Now, you may use this guide sitting down with your clients, you know, like on a meeting like this, or face-to-face, or sitting next to them. If you need it to guide you through explaining things, I highly recommend that you do that. This is the way you're going to learn this information and not have to go back and refer to it and get back to your clients back and forth. You just pull it up and have a conversation with them. So as a reminder, when we talk to our clients about this stuff, and as I'm talking to you now, this is a guide that's based on patient experience and research. Most of this is, you know, this is all my research and experience over all of these years learning about the thyroid, but in no way is this guide to be interpreted as medical advice or direction. Your interpretation of this guide is at your own risk, and using this guide is based on your own interpretation of the resources and information. So if you choose to share it with your clients, just as an FYI, Make sure that they know, you may want to even read this with them, that this is just, it's a resource, again, that you're passing along to them. This is no different from me to you guys, to your clients, than you going out and grabbing an article by Chris Kresser. You are just simply giving it from me, okay? Just wanted to clarify that. All right, so quotes and references are used to emphasize the points. A medical practitioner did not write this book or oversee it, la da 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 da. And of course, the disclaimer, you, your client or yourself should seek a thyroid expert for a complete education on the endocrine system. You can begin your search here. Now, to get familiar with this guide, it looks familiar. I'm sure you guys, if you've used the food guide at all, it is written in the same format. The same person put it into an ebook for me. You will find links and resources in blue throughout this guide, all right? So we are going to start off with talking about the location of the thyroid and its function. And some of this stuff is going to be a bit repetitive because it bears repeating as we go along in the process. So the thyroid gland, if you don't know what it is or where it is, you should know, because we all have one, unless it's been surgically removed or we were born without one, which in any case is very rare. But it's a vitally important hormonal gland that plays an essential role in metabolism, growth, and maturation of the human body. Now, when we talk about the metabolism, usually the first place people go with this is metabolism, like how fast do we burn fat? How fast are we metabolizing our calories or whatever? I want you to try and open your mind, and I've got to move my video, you guys. I'm distracting myself because I see myself moving in the corner. Okay. Anyway, I want you to open your mind to the idea that metabolism means so much more than fat, calories, food, weight loss. Metabolism is simply anything in the body that uses energy. So we're talking about how our eyebrows grow, how our cells use energy, how our nails grow, how our brain function. And it helps to regulate many of those bodily functions. There is actually, I'm going to talk more about this as we go along, but there is a cell receptor almost on every part of your body for thyroid hormone. That's how important it is. It constantly releases a certain amount of hormones into your blood that your body needs to survive, needs to thrive. So while we're not going to die if our thyroid just slows down, without a thyroid, you cannot survive, okay? So more hormones are produced when the body needs more energy in certain situations, like growth, coldness, or during pregnancy. Someone asked the other day about why someone's immune system slows down, or why they struggle when the weather changes or with barometric pressure. So those types of things are considered stress. And when our body is under a temperature change or a mood change or an emotion change or physical change, it's considered a stressor. So what happens when the body is under stress, sends a signal to the thyroid that says, hey, we're under stress over here. And the thyroid's like, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to slow you down a little bit, help you understand that, while this is going on, we need everything to just kind of slow down so that we can deal with the stress. So while the thyroid is blamed so much for being a problem, the thyroid is really a communicator. It's really one of those things that's on standby, always watching out for us, always making sure that we have what we need, that we are not doing too much, and so on. But most of the time when people have thyroid issues, we're not listening. We simply don't listen. So I'm going to pull this box back over here on the questions. Hold on a minute. Come on. Okay. All right. So the organ is located in the front part of the neck below the voice box and has the shape of a butterfly. So if you guys have seen all of these thyroid support groups, documents, books, they always have a butterfly on it. That's why. So there are two side lobes on the right and the left, and they're connected at the front by a narrow strip of tissue, a tiny little tissue strip. And the side lobes actually, and I'm going to show you guys a picture in a minute, they enclose the windpipe. They kind of go around and end at the sides and barely behind the windpipe. So you almost have to think about like this is my pen here. I can show you my lipstick. That might work better. So this is the kind of like the isthmus, or the windpipe. And the thyroid just kind of closes around that. Doesn't exactly touch in the back, but closes around the back. So it's all encompassing. It's important to understand how tightly bound it is to other organs in the body. The thyroid gland uses iodine to convert T4 into T3 by using a combination of tyrosine, which is an amino acid, or tyrosine, depending on how you want to say it, and iodine, which creates the T4 and T3. We're going to go into a lot more about that to the depth, like you guys are not going to believe how much we're going to talk about that. But I wanted you to have just a general idea of where it is, what it does, and just bring those two hormones gently into the conversation, because they are going to dominate so much of what we talk about. All right, so while that picture is up, You know, and as I stop through, you know what, and I said to put your questions in the Q&A, you guys, but I almost feel like maybe you should put them over here in the chat. You can't see this, but my chat box is over here. So whichever, but I can follow and track if something comes up during the conversation. Might be easier to do that. All right, so there's your image of the thyroid. So as you can see, there's your lobes right down here. And they say left thyroid gland. I mean, it's the right lobe and the left lobe. And this is your windpipe, your trachea. And so you can kind of see how it hugs that windpipe, okay? All right, so again, there's a receptor for thyroid hormone on virtually every cell in the body. If you don't produce enough of this hormone, your entire body can be affected. Hair, skin, nails, brain, body temperature, mood, gut function, etc. So important. You know, it's interesting because so many people walk around and they have thyroid disease and or thyroid problems, and they just say, oh, I'm just hypothyroid. I've just got hypothyroidism, as if it's a normal thing. And as we are going along and we're working with our clients, we are seeing how absolutely prevalent but not normal this problem really is. So when you work with people and they say, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that I've got hypothyroidism, you know, maybe a month down the line, or if they didn't put it on their intake form or something like that. And that's happened to me before. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Like everything we've worked on the first month we've been together is null and void. We need to go back and talk about what's going on with the thyroid, because the thyroid plays such a huge part in things. So I want to show you this. So thyroid function resources. These are just some of my top functional and conventional, resources here. And this is where I also have to remind you guys and encourage you. Don't just go out there, you know, looking for other resources when you have this guide in your hands. Keep it on the top of your desk. Click on the links. It takes you everywhere you need to go. So let me show you. If you've never seen Stop the Thyroid Madness before, I'm going to show you why you don't really need to go anywhere else. So Janie Bothrup, who started this page right here, is one of my, she was one of the first people that really took me beyond the idea that, beyond the idea that the thyroid has anything to do with other things that were going on in my own system, right? It really opened my eyes to how many things in my body were being affected by my thyroid and how it was slowing down the autoimmunity. Kathy's asking over here, how can they not mention it? It's specifically asked in the intake. Hi, Lisa. The reason why some people may not mention it is they may want to skip over that. They may skip over many things in your intake form. It's happened to me where people don't think it's important because they think it's just part of who they are. Oh, you don't need to know about that. Well, it is a major, major condition. I had a girl tell me that she had hyperthyroidism, and then she had a hypothyroidism. She had radiation. I mean, she had all these things that never told me about it. It just like was so much a part of her past, she did not discuss it with me to begin with. So that can happen. All right, so let me scroll through here. So, the website, it's relatively easy to look at, you guys, but she kind of put some of the main things on the front. You know, your TSH lab can look normal, but you can still have hypothyroidism, which we're going to talk about. But she has so much information on here that I just don't really feel like there's a whole lot of other places that you need to do a lot of searching in. So documents for how to find a good doctor, Doctor's Hall of Shame. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. So this page right here is just one resource, and it goes on and on. Once you click a link, it's going to take you down a rabbit hole. Okay. So give me a second. My internet connection is unstable, but it's back up. Okay. So what does the thyroid do? So we mentioned it was one of the master metabolic regulators, right? Some consider it the master. Some others see the hypothalamus or the pituitary as that master. But one thing we know for sure is they all communicate with each other, right? Remember the hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal axis, it's all tied in together, okay? All of it. So it is indeed our master metabolic regulator. But what that means in layman's terms is that this gland is responsible for so many things. It plays a huge part in determining everything from all of the growth in your hair and your nails and your sex drive and so on. It is largely important for quality of life, you guys. I mean, I just want you to think about, let's use an example here, okay? Let's use an example of sex drive. I think it's a great, important topic. We should all be thinking more about how that is, because it's a sign of health. It's a sign of how our hormones are functioning. Do we have a sex drive? What are our emotional relationships like? So let's just say someone's sex drive slows down and there's nothing else going on. They're like, they got a good relationship with their spouse. They are sleeping enough. But this one little thing, well, it's not little, but this one thing slows down, and they're wondering, why are they losing that passion and that drive? It could be the very first sign that the thyroid is slowing down, the very first sign. So if we ignore even the smallest of these symptoms and signals, we could be just waiting for all of the other things to come our way. So when someone says, well, I feel great, really, it's just I have a low sex drive and I want to know how to eat better. I always think to myself, okay, not only are the sex hormones involved here, but we have to think about the thyroid too. So I automatically say, all right, we're going to help you live better, but I want to not just tuck away the sex drive. I don't want to just put that on the shelf like it's nothing, because that could be leading to slow hair growth, depression, brain fog, weight problems, and so on and so forth, okay? So, and you're going to see just how big the list of symptoms can be as we go along. It's hugely important for quality of life. I already said that. The importance of this gland for good health cannot be understated, yet it is becoming one of the most misunderstood and mistreated glands in medicine today. This is evidenced by the sheer amount of people going undiagnosed and improperly treated and still living with symptoms, which we're learning all about through this guide. So I've provided you with links. Again, like each one, I'm trying to provide you with the resources to take those pieces further. So the things that I'm telling you about, if you want to learn more about them, then you have a place to go further with them, okay? So symptoms should always be the driving force in thyroid care, and with any care really, but especially with thyroid, when we have that god-awful TSH that we need to know, but seems to be driving whether or not doctors think we're healthy or not, when it's really not the main hormone for thyroid. It's a pituitary hormone that signals the thyroid. It tells you nothing about what's going on in the thyroid. So when a piece of paper comes back and it has normal labs on it, it really means nothing in the presence of symptoms that are tied into hypothyroidism, okay? So a lab, and many times the doctor is going to say, oh, well, your labs look great, so you're fine, right? And this happens a lot when people are on Synthroid as well. So like T4 is Synthroid. They are put on T4 and the doctor tests their TSH, and that is such a small piece of the puzzle. It's not even a full piece of a 1,000-piece puzzle, you guys. I don't even think of it as that important because it lacks so much to tell us the story about someone's health. It is an important part of diagnosing thyroid disease, but one of the biggest pieces missing is listening to the patient. So I coined this term, the paper versus the person syndrome. When a doctor trusts labs more than a patient, the patient's symptoms get dismissed and their symptoms continue. You're going to see this so much as you go along and you're working with clients, and the busier you get. Back to Stop the Thyroid Madness. This is a list of symptoms that basically covers everything that having a low thyroid function can cause. And I'm not going to go over every one of them. My Lord, we'd be here for a year. But I do want you to look, and she is specific that says it's totally based on actual thyroid patient descriptions and not about adrenal specific symptoms either, okay? It's just things that people with thyroid disorder or disease have talked about. So we know the common symptoms of hypothyroidism are fatigue, dry hair, nails falling out, eyebrows thinning on the outside, and weight gain, right? And achiness, so to speak. Well, look at this. So starting with energy levels, it's more than just fatigue. It's feeling weak. It's the need to nap. It's long recovery after activity, and that includes exercise intolerance, nodding off easily, slowing down to a snail's pace, sleep and rest, insomnia, dark circles, heavy eyelids, moods and emotions, suicidal thoughts, depression, actual diagnosis, you guys, of bipolar, schizophrenia, real, true, psychiatric symptoms are coming through because of thyroid. Metabolism as it pertains to body temperature, weight, feeling cold, hands and feet, stomach acid and foods. It reduces your stomach acid, which causes acid reflux. Contrary to popular belief, too much stomach acid does not cause acid reflux. Too little does. Nutrients, poor absorption, cardiovascular, and I'm going to give an example of something that happened to me in regards to cardiovascular relationship to thyroid medication as we go through. Elimination of bowel, bowel eliminations, movements, all of that. Hair and skin, which has a ton. Even down to acne and swelling. There's a swelling and edema that I think Gabriella talked about on the page a couple weeks ago about maybe her son had some swelling and edema, if I'm remembering correctly. That's one of the bigger ones is the ankles and the legs can swell. Issues in the head area, dry eye syndrome, which I have struggled with in the past. Hands, legs, feet. She really breaks it down. And the reason why, here's another thing I want to point out, you guys. The reason why it's important to know that there are so many other symptoms out there is you're going to get clients that are kind of come to you and they're going to be like, well, I have fibromyalgia. And you know, I know those of you who know me, we've got a lot of new people joining the group these days, and you'll get to know me and how I always believe that fibromyalgia and things like that are not, they're not diagnosis, they're symptoms. Now I got to check something, you guys, because I wanted to make sure I was recording. I didn't see the little button. So anyway, so I think they're symptoms of something bigger. So when someone says, oh, I have osteoporosis, one of the things I think is, okay, do you have thyroid problems, right? Someone says, I've been diagnosed with depression. I think, well, how's your thyroid functioning? It's one of the very first things that comes into my mind, and that's why it's added to the intake form, is what is going on? What is going on at the level of the thyroid, at the level of the metabolism that the body needs, of that uptake of thyroid hormone and fuel to function, to not have edema, to not have forgetfulness, to not have mood disorders and inability to function and low sex drive, right? Okay, so sex hormones are affected, immune function is affected, and with significant stress of my own, which is definitely much better in the last couple of weeks, you guys. I went and got an IgA subclass immune panel just to make sure my immune system was functioning properly, because I do have Hashimoto's. Everything came back great, but it was something that I was getting ahead of, because even though when you're in the middle of the stress, maybe you feel good, the aftermath of the stress is when the thyroid's like, okay, exhausted, tired, oh my gosh, what did we just go through? And then the symptoms can start to creep in. So anyway, as you can see, the list is lengthy. I highly encourage you guys to be familiar with the fact that, you know, or even have this saved up. I had all of these types of things on here: tailbone pain, a cold butt. Let me tell you about the cold butt. I tell this story because it's true that it happens. So if you don't know anything about peripheral tissue are the things that are furthest away from the heart, right? So hands and feet is why people, blood flow is affected when you have thyroid issues, okay? So hands and feet are one of the things that get cold. The tip of your nose can get cold, but your actual butt can get cold because of the blood flow of the derriere as considered a peripheral part of your body. And I had that. I'm like, why is my rear end so cold all the time? And it was like summertime, you guys. So that's a real symptom. I started laughing about that and thinking, wow, like how little did I would never attribute that to the thyroid. So that's how wide I want you to cast your net about what you believe could be a symptom of thyroid problems. All right, I'm pausing for a second. Are there any questions so far? Yeah, I'm just reading up the questions here. Yeah, okay, so the edema is gone, Gabriella. Oh, good, Gabriella, you're on. Good. Okay, so if someone is having thyroid issues and taking Synthroid and still has symptoms, should they still go and have a full panel, including antibodies? Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. And we're going to talk about why all of that. We have so much information. It's just 50 pages. Oh, it looks like it's 66 pages. I just saw the page pop up. So there's a lot of that we're going to cover. We're going to go into great detail about medications and fillers and antibodies and testing and labs and all of that. So I'm hoping you're going to get your answer. If not, I'm here to answer questions. So a thyroid, Sandy's asking, why would one of the thyroid lobes or the entire thyroid be removed? Well, that could be because of Graves' disease. It could be because of nodules that might be suspicious, cancer, anything like that. There are times, there have been thyroid people that have come to me that have had 1 or 2 nodules, which is normal. We're going to talk about that. But then I've also had someone come to me where it was so marbled and so diseased, it just wasn't even putting out hormone at all. It just didn't make sense to leave it there. She got it removed. And when you don't have a thyroid, as you learn, you have to be on medication for life, okay? So I've already talked a little bit about the location of the thyroid, but I wanted to, again, throw this, your way. I want you to note the intimate connection between the gland and the trachea. So the fact that it's attached is important, you guys, because sometimes when the thyroid becomes inflamed, and I've seen communication in our health coaching groups where someone has asked, and I want to say, like, if my memory is even working today, Brenda, and maybe it was Brenda, had mentioned that she had a full feeling in the front of her throat, and I had answered back in the mentorship group, yes, I've had that before, and it was my thyroid. It was during times of stress. It literally feels like you have something in your throat, or that someone's got their hand pressing on the thyroid, or not that you're going to choke, but kind of, because the more you focus on that sensation, the scarier it can get. I have had people think they're having a complete panic attack and put themselves into a panic attack when all it is, and I don't mean all, I just mean this can happen and not anything be wrong except the thyroid reacting to stress. It was just swelling. The thyroid was swelling in reaction to hormone release. So it is very possible that people are running to get, you know, they're running to get MRIs and ultrasounds and all of that. And it's just a relief to know that you can get that sensation simply from being under stress with the thyroid putting out different amounts of hormone than you're used to feeling. So let's see here. Bernadette is saying her mother-in-law had hers removed after Chernobyl melted down. A thing to do prophylactically. I think you mean prophylactically, maybe, for people who lived in Europe at the time. Yeah. And so, you know, here's the other thing though. That's a Chernobyl probably affected the thyroid significantly, because as you're going to learn, the things that affect the thyroid are environmental toxins, emotions, foods, you name it. There's so many things that affect the thyroid. So I would assume that the toxins from that meltdown might have impaired the endocrine system significantly to where it wasn't doing her any good. I mean, or it could have just been making her sicker. I don't know, but that's just a thought. Okay, so as you can see, removing the thyroid gland can be dangerous to the other parts of the body because they are in such close proximity. When you remove the thyroid, it's called a thyroidectomy, removal of the thyroid partially or totally. And there's a link right there that's going to take you to learning about that. Should never be taken lightly and only removed under serious circumstances. And so, you know, the reason why is because, and I'm going to talk about this in a second, but the fact that people just are going out and say, well, we'll just take it out. Sometimes that happens because doctors are uncomfortable with managing thyroid. I've actually had that. I've had a client that happened to. There was nothing really wrong with it. They just couldn't manage it. So they took it out, which is disgusting and heartbreaking. But as we'll be talking about, thyroid disease can originate from autoimmunity. So when a doctor tells a patient that the immune system will stop attacking after thyroidectomy, it is important to note this. If one tiny shred, morsel, piece of tissue remains, the attack can continue. So by telling a patient the immune system will stop attacking after thyroidectomy, it's false. And there's not a lot of studies out there that support that, unfortunately. I have found one that I have included here. It's on important information on how tissue can remain. So here's the thing. If you got the entire thyroid out, let's say someone takes the whole thyroid out, they get all of the tissue of the thyroid out, there is more than likely going to be damage to the windpipe, right, the trachea, because it's wrapped around and attached. It's attached to the isthmus. Many people have the thyroid removed and then they start having problems with coughing. They get a really, really like a scratchy voice, like Demi Moore style. After it's been removed several years later, they start having swallowing problems. Things can happen. So just, you know, to remove the thyroid based on the fact that you think the immune system is going to stop being attacked it's just not the right reason to take it out. Because you're going to damage other parts of the body. So, and my thing is to always, you know, if someone is considering removal, obviously, I like to send them that article and let them know, you know, if your thyroid's taken out, it doesn't mean that you get to act like you're living without autoimmunity, because more than likely, if you've been diagnosed, you're still going to have that ability to have your thyroid attack. No matter how big or how small the tissue is that's left behind, it's still in the body. It's still a foreign invader. It's still a foreign object. The body says this needs to go. Okay. All right, autoimmunity and the types of thyroid disease. So the two most common types of thyroid disease are Graves. And again, your blue links here, you guys, click them and go learn more, because I could never, ever write a guide that thorough that's going to cover all this, but which is autoimmune hyperthyroidism, and Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune hypothyroidism. These two conditions have opposite hormonal responses in the body, but many times a person can have parallel symptoms. A person can even have both at the same time. Let's talk about throwing like a big fat monkey wrench into understanding thyroid. I mean, oh my gosh, I've actually had a point where I was, I guess I was in the Graves state. I don't know. I know that my thyroid was hyper functioning at the time. I never got tested for the antibodies because I didn't know what was going on at the time, but I was very, very thin. I had, you know, I look back at the pictures now and I think, I remember, and this just even goes into like the way we see ourselves, you guys, just taking that a little step further. I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to wear a bikini to the beach because I feel fat. Okay. I can't even believe that, because I look at the pictures then and how bad I felt. I remember it because of how bad I felt, how anxious, like internally I was. I was so thin, my ribs were sticking out, my abs were showing, I was bony. I mean, it was just crazy. And I was in that upswing, right? The hyperswing. Then later on, Hashimoto's came in, because when the thyroid goes on that burnout, right, it starts to burn the thyroid out and the hormone starts pumping out. Then the Hashimoto's typically comes in, which was the autoimmune hypothyroidism, where the thyroid slows down. It's not every time. Just because you have Graves doesn't mean you're going to get Hashimoto's. It just means that, it can happen at the same time, and it's worth testing for both if you are feeling like you are on a roller coaster, or your physical body feels like it's on a roller coaster. All right, and the autoimmune process can be developing for years before rearing its ugly head. For more information about that, there's a link, and I highly recommend that. This goes back to everything I talk about when it comes to symptoms, diagnosis, and problems. Is, we think that, we have clients that tell us, well, I felt fine last week, I was fine. And then all of a sudden, I don't feel good. Well, it's never all of a sudden. It's happening under the surface. It's in the background of our lives. We are developing, we are dealing with, we are creating the perfect storm in our system. So there's great information on Th1 and Th2 dominant T helper cells in the immune system. You guys can take it further if you want to. I actually even went into, when I found out I had Hashimoto's, I went through the entire process of learning about Th1, learning about Th2. I actually ordered Th1 supplements and Th2 supplements to try and figure out which one I was. And I don't even remember what happened with it, because then shortly after that I learned that it didn't really matter, that the approach for the food and all of that stuff was the same. So anyway, there's more information you can learn about that. So an autoimmune attack it's really important to know what autoimmune disease is, because it's thrown around the coaching community like daily, right? I mean, are we not always hearing, oh, it's an autoimmune disease, so I have autoimmunity? Well, an autoimmune attack is an abnormal immune response to a body part. It's that simple. The body stimulates these T helper cells, that's stimulating the B cells, which make antibodies that attack the thyroid or the joints or, the connective tissue or the skin, whatever it may be. So, for example, in Hashimoto's or Graves, we know the body is stimulating the B cells, which make antibodies that are attacking the thyroid. In rheumatoid arthritis, they test for the Rh factor. They are producing the antibodies that attack the joints, okay? Let me think, connective tissue would be, connective tissue would be anything inside the fascia, all of those pieces that hold your body together. I mean, there's a lot of other things out there. I don't know enough details to share, but thinking about autoimmunity, just think about it. If you're diagnosed with something like lupus, it's attacking something like this, okay? So in order for autoimmunity to express itself, which many people say, well, my mom has it, so I have it. That's not necessarily true. And if you guys have not looked at the schedule, just as a heads up, we do have, I've got Toolbox Genomics, or I have to look at it again. She's genetics in my email, and genomics, I think, in another, and on the website. They're coming to us to talk about genetics, 23andMe, using their application. It will be a great tool for your clients to use and for you. But if you have autoimmunity, it can have a genetic component, but it must have a trigger as well. And we're going to cover triggers as we go along. But just know that just because a person has that genetic propensity, it doesn't mean that they're going to actually trigger the process of autoimmunity. It's really important for people to understand that, because they think they're destined for something. Just because my mom had this, or just because my dad had that, doesn't mean that you automatically are going to get it. It's kind of, sometimes I find that it can be an excuse. So someone might say, well, I'm not going to give up those kinds of foods if they affect my thyroid, because I'm just going to get it anyway. My mom has it. Well, that's just an excuse to not take action to have a healthier body, in my opinion. And I like to let them know you don't necessarily have to have that, right? I see a question over here. Does thyroid conditions affect, or is it a cause of RA, or is there any connection? So that's a good question. I think that we have to keep in mind that once we have one autoimmune disease, we are very prone. I think it's a 50% chance that we will have another one if we don't change our food and lifestyle. So no, I don't think it causes rheumatoid arthritis. I don't think any autoimmunity causes another autoimmunity. I think it's a dysfunction of the immune system, period, right? Sandy is, let me see here. No, that was the end of the question. Okay, yeah. So no, I don't think one causes the other. I could be wrong, but I'm not a doctor, so I'm not skilled on the knowledge of those things causing the others. But I know that, like I just said that out loud, and now I'm reading it. But it has been said the chances are very high. So it's one important reason that you got to understand thyroid disease, because it can just start with thyroid and then roll into something else happening. So treating the thyroid alone is not going to stop an autoimmune attack, which is the big fat myth amongst doctors today. They say, take this medication and then, we'll come back in 4 to 6 weeks and we'll talk about it. Well, guess what? Taking a medication doesn't fix the reason the autoimmune disease is happening. And most people don't even understand, most doctors don't even understand that thyroid problems come from autoimmunity most of the time. So they are literally just giving you a Band-Aid to put on, like just say your arm has been cut off and a doctor gives you a Band-Aid, right? It's the same thing. They're not fixing the problem. They're not giving you something to fix the problem for good, or find out why it's happening, or why did your arm get cut off? Here's a Band-Aid. It just makes no sense at all. Thank God this is becoming more mainstream, and conventional medical doctors are hopefully going to catch up with functional practices. But right now, the majority of doctors have the same belief when it comes to the conventional medical community. So you can, of course, make recommendations for an autoimmune paleo style diet. If you don't believe in the paleo diet, you can do an autoimmune vegetarian diet, whatever it may be. You can make a recommendation to them to look into these diets. And I put these words are in here, you guys, because this is a resource for you. So it's not you saying diet, it's me putting it in the document. Okay. So those are 3 that I think are really, really good. All right. Any further questions so far? I gotta have a sip of tea. My gosh, it's amazing how dry your throat can get when you talk so much. All right, so here are further resources for autoimmunity. And I want to go ahead and I want to tap on the autoimmune disease list, because I want you guys to see how prevalent autoimmunity is in the world today. So this is a list of autoimmune diseases that can come from, anything, any kind of trigger. I'm just going to scroll down here. Look at that. So you've got endometriosis is considered autoimmune. Fibromyalgia's got some asterisks by it, probably because they don't believe, or they don't know enough about it to call it that. Guillain-Barré syndrome, Hashimoto's encephalitis, thyroiditis, herpes gestations. I mean, it's insane how much, you guys. And see, this is the test I had done, IgA and IgG4, immunoregulatory lipoproteins. I mean, so much, you guys, to think about. So, the thyroid is just one tiny little autoimmune problem. But when you go through and you use this guide, it's going to give you these resources where if you work with clients that have, aplastic anemia, just throwing that one out there, or alopecia, which I've had, worked with people with that, or dysautonomia, autonomia, or whatever it is, you have a resource here that you can always return to. Okay. All right. Section 2. Well, we're just cruising through page 14. Graves' disease. So this is absolutely, probably the smallest when it comes to the discussion of thyroid. Graves is not a very big part of this guide, because most people don't have Graves, or they have had it and they burned their thyroid out. They've ended up with Hashimoto's or into hypothyroid. But we are going to talk about it briefly. So it's the most common form of hyperthyroidism. It can sometimes be considered more urgent because of the increased metabolic rate, which causes palpitations, arrhythmias, etc. All right, so someone with hypothyroidism, they may feel like they're dying and they're in a state of emergency because they just feel so bad, you guys. If you're hypothyroid at all, or you've been in the middle of a flare for your autoimmunity of hypothyroidism, you know how terrible it can feel. But a person with Graves can feel and seem worse simply because of that increased metabolic rate. So the heart rate may increase, anxiety starts to happen. They're not sleeping, which just adds to the load. And so it can be more of a concern because the heart is under more stress. Other causes of hyperthyroidism could be a toxic nodular or multinodular goiter. And we're going to learn about a little bit about nodules as we go along, but let me go ahead and click on that. For those of you, I don't want to keep talking about nodules and then everyone not have an understanding about what they are. So nodules are pretty common as people age. You know, you may ultrasound an 80-year-old woman and she may have 5, but never been diagnosed with any kind of a Hashimoto's or thyroid problem. It's just a growth that she's lived with. And then you may have someone who is in their 20s who has a single nodule and they're diagnosed with Hashimoto's. So here's a really good picture. I think I might even have that in my guide. I might have found that somewhere and saved it. But anyway, so as you can see, so thyroid nodules can be solid tissue or filled with blood or other fluid. So I don't want that. Hold on. Thyroid nodules are quite common, with as many as half of all people having at least one by age 60. So there's that, right? So do they cause symptoms? Most often they don't cause symptoms, and they may not cause too much trouble at all. But, you know, again, some of the symptoms of hyperthyroidism would be the things that increase your metabolic rate: shaking, rapid heart rate, sweating, things like that. And in addition, you know, the other thing we can talk about where the thyroid, remember when I was talking about earlier how the thyroid is pushing out hormone, it can feel like it's swelling. In addition to that, larger nodules can cause difficulty swallowing or breathing, hoarseness, and neck pain too. So that's just something to consider. So nodules, again, they run in families. They may have a genetic basis, but many times they're found in people that have iodine deficiency, okay? And we're going to talk about iodine in depth, so I don't want to go too much into that. But, you know, you can get a fine needle aspiration for sampling a nodule. You can do an ultrasound. I'm going to talk about all that as we go along. But just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an idea of what a nodule actually was, okay? So here is a picture of someone with hyperthyroidism. So the bulging eyes, the goiter, the enlarged thyroid, you know, this is the difference between those two people. I used to have a really good picture where it was a woman split down the middle and one side of her body was hyperthyroid and the other side was hypothyroid. You can see the difference, but I think it was, I want to say it was someone put out something that was copyright infringement to use it, so I just removed it. It had been circling around the internet for many years. So for anyone who's working with someone with Graves', this is a great little page to share with your clients, learn more about Graves' symptoms and what they can do naturally to approach it and so on. So one thing that someone can actually do to slow the thyroid down is to eat and drink raw goitrogenic vegetables. Now you'd have to do an excessive amount of that for sure, but it has been proven to work, and there's a list right there of what those vegetables are. All right. Am I going too fast, you guys? I mean, I talk a million miles an hour anyway, but just put some comments in. Am I on track for speed? Do you need me to slow down a little? Connie's like a little. And remember, you're getting a copy. This is already loaded into your mentorship and mastery group. So you don't have to take notes about this, and you're going to get a copy of the recording. So don't try to sit and write everything I'm saying down. This is going to be in your hands. So no need to do that. Just try to absorb the information. Here's a great little document about, yeah, Connie, I know you were trying to take notes, so I'm saying that. So Graves' disease owes its name to Robert James Graves, who described the condition in 1835. That's how long this has been around, you guys. It's a syndrome that classically comprises hyperthyroidism with a diffuse goiter, eye disease, inflammation of the interorbital structures, which is where the bulging eyes comes from, dermopathy, referred to as pretibial myxedema, and rare involvement of the nails, fingernails, and bones, such as acropathy. I'm terrible with medical terms. Anyway, I could stumble over those 1,000 times, but just a nice little link right there to learn more about it. Okay, so we are going to dive into the Hashimoto's, because this is the one that is the most common thing that we are going to hear about, or we have been hearing about. Those of you who have been following Isabella Wentz, she has, excuse me, my eye is just itching like crazy. It's really warm out here today, so everything's falling off the trees and blooming at the same time. Anyway, I was privileged enough to be interviewed by her for her Thyroid Secret series. I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet, so I don't know if I made it into the video, if anybody sees me in there. I was there for one of her recording weeks, and got to tell a little bit about my story and how it affected me as well. And so she has really brought more attention to Hashimoto's than any person ever. So if you haven't watched, if you don't have her book, there's a link to it in this guide as well. If you haven't seen the Thyroid Secret, you should. It's really amazing. She's done a phenomenal job, and she's coming from experience as well. So sadly, 90% or more people with hypothyroidism are producing those antibodies to thyroid tissue, but not everyone is being tested for it. This is what is causing the immune system to attack and eventually destroy the thyroid, which over time causes a decline in thyroid hormone levels, leading to lifelong dependency on exogenous, outside the body. Remember, exogenous means outside hormone supplementation. So remember, the thyroid makes the hormones that it needs, but if the thyroid is under attack or it's slowing down or it's under stress, that thyroid hormone production is going to stop or slow down. And we're going to have to do something to make sure that we are, able to live our lives and metabolize and grow hair and do all of those things. So we have to, many times we end up taking it exogenously. So Hashimoto's is one of the most common autoimmune disorders in the United States and affects somewhere between 7 and 8% of the population. I would say that number's higher just based on recent studies, but that's what it was when I wrote this when I updated it last year. So not everyone with Hashimoto's has hypothyroid symptoms. Even though antibodies have been found to be a predictive marker for future thyroid disease, you can still be positive for Hashimoto's without elevated antibodies. Okay. Oh, was I on there, Gabriella? Oh, good. I haven't watched it. Gabriella, if you can remember which episode or which part of the Thyroid Secret I was in, I would love to see it. But let me say this, you guys. So this is the other thing. People might write down on your intake form, oh, I don't have Hashimoto's, I was tested and I was negative. Well, you can still be positive for Hashimoto's with a negative test result. All right, it's positive. So I almost tell everyone who has hypothyroidism, just assume that you have Hashimoto's because more than likely you do. And I'm gonna show you this document about why this is the case. So when it comes to thyroid antibodies, it is a definitive marker for Hashimoto's. There can be confusion, right? So Dr. Karazian talks in detail about this. Now, Dr. Karazian has brought massive amounts of awareness to thyroid health as well as brain health and all of that kind of thing. But I'm going to scroll down here because we're going to go into all the antibodies and the numbers, the letters, and all the acronyms later. But why you can have negative antibody results and still have Hashimoto's. What it says is, say all your symptoms point to Hashimoto's, but your antibody tests are negative. You're going to learn that as your practitioner sees negative antibodies and says you're cured of Hashis, they don't understand the basic principles of Hashimoto's autoimmunity, the waxing and waning immune system. Okay, so this is just one thing that can happen here. Someone may, test positive one week and negative the next, and that's just due to the immune system being different or responding to the things that are going on. Like in the example here, talking about sugar and gluten, how that can affect the immune system. And then, later on, maybe it's negative if they go on a different kind of plant, right? A gluten-free, sugar-free plant. The other thing is overall immune weakness. If your immune system is in such poor shape, you may not be able to produce antibodies, okay? Th1 is higher than Th2. So if you have a higher, remember we touched on this earlier, Th1 dominance, then you do Th2 dominance, then that may be another reason for the negative antibodies. So I just think it's really important to, test for it, of course, and that's sometimes just seeing that it's positive on a test can be the push that a client needs or that you need to make the changes you need to take. Other times it's just testing to bring awareness, okay? Well, that just flew right out of I just hit eliminate that and it went somewhere instead of closing it. Anyway, all right, so common symptoms of Hashimoto's we've already covered, joint pain, weight gain, etc. And here are some in-depth resources. So Hashimoto's Root Cause is Isabella's book, Goitrogens and Hashimoto's, Thyroid Information, and so on and so forth. You're Not Crazy, that's a great book, you guys, written by my friend Stacy. She is somebody, her story is really amazing, and she talks about, I think she does the Hashimoto's Girlfriend website or a Facebook group. She talks about her ups and downs in such an open and fabulous way that the book itself, when she got up and spoke her story at a seminar I was at, I was just blown away by her honesty and just the fact that people can struggle and suffer so much with such a myriad of symptoms that people think that they are insane. Or that's all in their head. I mean, when I first started having problems, it was under significant stress. I was getting married, I was moving, I was doing some of the big stressors in life all at one time. And the next thing I know, I've got pain in my feet where I can't walk. My back felt like it was on fire. I mean, you just name it. It was like a cascade of problems happened to me. And I remember my husband saying to me, all right, you've been to like 8 doctors. When is this going to stop? Maybe you just need to talk to somebody. And I'm like, I am not crazy. I am not crazy. I have problem. I have pain. I know that there's something wrong with me. Well, and I was vindicated when I was diagnosed. It was almost like, you know, I hate to be diagnosed, but it was kind of like, here you go, it's on paper. So there. That was 21 doctors later. So quick little note here. People with Hashimoto's should do the opposite of Graves' patients with goitrogens. Eating them raw can slow the thyroid down further. There's some controversy out there about how much you would have to eat to make this happen. Sorry, but if I know that there's a chance that it's going to make things slower for me, I'm just going to go with the error on the side of caution, and I'm going to cook them most of the time. Doesn't mean I don't eat them raw, you guys, but when you cook them, it removes 90% of the goitrogenic chemicals. So you pour the water out, the goitrogens go down the drain, and you still get your nutrients in your food. All right, let's see here. Is the goitrogen link in regard to the cooked versus raw that you sent me last week? No. If you're talking about the one in the guide, it's just a list of what goitrogenic vegetables are, Kathy. Should we have a T1 and T2 test if we know we have Hashimoto's? That's up to you on whether or not you want to take it that far. Many times just by changing, you know, the way that you're living life and what you're eating can bring your immune system in control. But I also think that we don't go deep enough with the other tests that we should be doing: pathogens, parasites, gut dysfunction, stress, all of those things. So knowing the Th1 and Th2, maybe it'll lend you some ideas on how to switch things up. But if you don't find the reason why it's happening, the Th2 and Th1 dominance is kind of just another feather in your hat of information, in my opinion. So, all right. So many doctors don't believe testing antibodies is important because they're still going to treat the patient the same. They don't care. It doesn't matter. Like, oh, so you're positive. Okay. So here's your synthroid. Oh, you're negative. Here's your synthroid. Okay. So just because they have a number doesn't mean they're going to change anything about the way they treat you. So sometimes they just poo-poo it. Right. And one of the reasons why I think that happens is because they don't know what if it is positive, then what do? Well, they give you synthroid because they don't understand what is happening with the immune attack on the thyroid or how to go about fixing it. Okay. They have little to no training in the way food, stress, sleep, and exercise impact thyroid health. So they just end up trying to manage patient symptoms through medication instead of getting to the reason that the autoimmunity happened in the first place, which is what we do with health coaching. We are getting to the bottom of people's problems. At least that's what I hope you guys are learning through this mentorship group. That is what we are trying to learn to do. Digging into the triggers and finding out why the thyroid is being attacked can help the patient slow or even stop the attack. Let me check some questions here. Marcina's asking, you mentioned the immune panel. What is this? So the immune, I'll show you guys mine if I can pull it up without too many troubles in just a few minutes. We're about to wrap up on the guide and find a stopping point. So give me a minute on that and I'll show it to you. What do antibodies say about thyroid, slow, Hashimoto's? I'm confused. Okay, so just put that question away, Marzena, because we're going to go into all of that. We're going to talk about what all of those things mean. We're going to dig into what thyroid antibodies are. We're going to talk about everything. So I know there's probably going to be a lot of questions because it's a lot of information, but we're only on page 20. Like we're literally we've got 46 pages left to go of information. So I promise you that I have done as thorough a job as I can know to do as just as a non-doctor person. And I'm going to be sharing everything you guys possibly should need to know. Let's see here. Let's go through a little bit more and then we'll wrap up, and I'm going to share some labs of my own with you guys. So a person with thyroid disease should be able to go to the doctor and get the labs they need. You would assume so, right? We assume that we're going to go to the doctor and we say, I think my thyroid is slowing down. I need you to test it. And then we leave it in their hands. Well, when that happens, we get a TSH test most of the time. We may, if we're lucky, get a total T4, total T3. And then we're like, okay, well, my TSH is under, I think the standard lab measurement on my labs is 4.5, I want to say. I know I feel best when it's under, 2.5, around 2. So if I were to go in and get mine tested, the doctor comes back, well, you're at 3.5, everything's good. That's not enough. It's not enough, and we will talk about why it's not enough. But it's seldom, if ever, the truth when you walk into a doctor and they say, here you go, here's your lab, and you're like, well, that's all I need, and there's, yes, it is, you're fine. And if they don't know, they're not health coaches, so they don't know more, they'll just automatically think something else is wrong with them, and off they'll go on the doctor chase, and that's what happened to me. So Kathy's put a great, or a myth about goitrogens and thyroid disease, the Living Proof Institute. I think I've seen that one before, if I'm not mistaken. Is that relatively recent, Kathy? Yeah, I think I've seen that. I know that when I ate excessive amounts of raw broccoli, when I was doing a bunch of raw foods and juicing raw, and this, I did not feel as good as I did not have as energy. I felt like that tight feeling in my throat. I felt tired. So yeah. Oh, that's the one I sent you last week. So anyway, no wonder I've seen it. But I just know that when I ate that way, I didn't feel like things were optimal. So I think it's individual. I truly believe that, people are gonna have to make their own decisions about that kind of thing. But this chapter is going to explore how to find a doctor, what labs are most effective, and we're going to talk about the labs, where to get the labs, unconventional methods of testing that can be done at home, and sometimes a patient can be lucky enough to find a doctor who knows how to order the right labs the first time around. To me, this really demonstrates the desire to go the extra mile for a patient. And again, you guys, this is where we fit in. Someone comes to you, I've been diagnosed with thyroid issues, I don't feel good, and you're like, well, what thyroid tests have you had? And they say to you, TSH, total T4, total T3, because these are the gold standard. I just talked about these. And you're able to say, you know what? I'm going to give you some information. I want you to think about that. Maybe asking your doctor for some more labs and a more thorough picture of what's going on with the thyroid so we can see what could really be going on. So you're not telling them, oh, you need this, this, and this. You are giving them a list of labs, okay? You are telling them this is something to talk to your doctor about. And again, there are a few reasons doctors don't look beyond regular labs because they haven't been trained to. Another reason why is that they worry that insurance won't cover the labs because they're assumed to not be the norm for thyroid testing, and they don't want to be left with the bill. But they are becoming more the norm, you guys. I'm seeing them more and more on clients' labs, and I'm getting updates on people I used to work with, and they're saying to me, and I'm like, now that clinic's doing that. Thank God, And lastly, they may not know how to interpret them or to treat them according to results. So it's easier just to go with the status quo. So again, labs, many times they won't cover them, but they're starting to. So Connie's asking, do we give our clients the thyroid guide? Both the clients I'm working with right now need the information, or do I just send the links? That's up to you. So here's what I would suggest. I would suggest incorporating some of this information into a consultation. So yeah, so if you are doing, let's say you're doing a thyroid, a person comes to you and the only thing they're complaining about and they want your help with is understanding their thyroid further and how to eat, how to change their life, blah, blah, blah. This is how I would construct the entire 3-month contract with them, because you all know I believe in 3-month contracts. I think 6 months is too long, but I would say we're going to spend the first half of the first 1-hour session talking about the thyroid, and I would cover some of the key points of this guide. Anyone I've worked with thyroid gets this guide, the whole thing, but I usually save it until after I have educated them, given them an idea of what we're talking about, where we're going with things. They've gotten on the start with the action steps of changing their food, and then at the exit, kind of at the exit of our relationship after the 3rd month, I will give them this guide so they have it in their hand as an added bonus to working with me. They may want to sign back up with you for more explanation of this, but at least it's in their hands after they've been introduced to the idea that you have so much more to share with them on how they can feel better. All right, so the worst part of someone just going with status quo is a person with obvious symptoms of thyroid disease can go undiagnosed for years while their thyroid continues to suffer the attack. That was me, which ultimately can destroy the thyroid and leave the person dependent on medication for life. So I'm going to stop right there. And just, say that I'm not the kind of person, coach, friend, wife, mother that says always, like never, that kind of thing when it comes to things that are going on with our health. I feel like that was laid on me at one time in my life, that I will always be dependent on thyroid medication. I will always be this. I will never be that. And I just feel like it is setting people up for failure. It's defeating. Gives a sense of hopelessness. It makes them feel like they're not in control. And to me, it's just a very big disservice to people to tell them that they will always be dependent on medication, that something is permanent and never will go away. I mean, we see stories and we've seen on TV, my gosh, I mean, 2020, I mean, you name it. How many times have we seen stories of miracles? And you don't have to be a big believer in God or a super religious person to believe that the body has an ability to heal and repair and remove things that don't work for it. that takes things into a whole other perspective as far as like where we go with that thinking, which I plan on doing a class on at some point, but I'm in the middle of a book. It's like 700 pages right now. So I need to learn more about that topic before I share it. But I ultimately think that what is our belief about what is going to happen to us is a bigger predictor of what does happen to us physically. So when I was told you're going to take this medication forever, I was like, thanks a lot, for that. I never went back to that doctor again. And I encourage my clients and my family and anybody that I know that asks for my opinion about doctors, if they try to lay a diagnosis on you of forever or a doomsday type of thing, find someone else. You want someone in your corner that believes that you have the ability, or that your clients have the ability to get well, to repair, to live a full life without that cloud hanging over their head. So I know many of you have probably had that same experience, and it's not a pleasant one. But so I want to touch on a couple of links here real quick before we wrap up. So I want to make sure that that we have, you guys know the tools in your toolbox are all in this guide. Put these tools in your toolbox of working with people with thyroid. Here is one of them. If your client's doctor only uses the old TSH lab standards, and that person is saying, well, I can't change doctors because my husband's insurance only allows me to see that doctor. Okay, fine. So let's get around that a little bit. Let's learn why it's not adequate. Teach the client why it's not adequate. Convince or talk your client into taking some pieces of this particular article and taking it to their doctor. And then saying to them, this is why I want to test beyond the TSH. Look at this. Like, this is why. Like, there's science and studies and all that. Can you just be my partner? I'll pay for it out of pocket, whatever I need to do. But it's important for people to understand that it's not enough. It's not enough, because if you are working with someone with thyroid problems and they're just saying, well, I'm just going to get the TSH and that's it. It's almost like I almost throw my hands up on that one, because I'm like, well, I have no idea if you have enough free hormone in your blood to turn into fuel. We don't know that. We don't know if you have high antibodies. We don't know what your iron is like. We don't know any of that. So I can't really take things further for you. I can help you with your food and your sleep and all of that. But if we don't really know what's going on at a cellular level and you're not willing to take it there, then it's hard for me to consider working with someone like that. So anyway, there's a briefing on the old TSH. Doctors need to rethink. And TSH, why it's useless. Super important to understand this. Again, see how these resources are all leading back, right? So we're back at Stop the Thyroid Madness, because she's just so thorough. So this lab, the TSH, has been around since the early 70s and is called the gold standard to ascertain the thyroid state or know whether you're adequately treated on your medications. So this is what they know about the thyroid, the TSH. They say it's a reliable physiological marker of thyroid function, regardless of whether you're hypo or hyper. They say that it's an accurate guide for your medication supplementation amount. They say the lower your TSH and desiccated thyroid, desiccated means natural, like pork gland or porcine gland thyroid hormone, the greater your chance of osteoporosis or heart attack. Wrong. There's an optimal place to be on the TSH meds range when on meds, such as between 1 and 2 or fill in the blank. So again, we're back to the paper versus the person syndrome, you guys. But reported experience of patients for years have found all of those things to be completely false. Patients experiences with the TSH lab. So though an above range TSH finally reveals that someone is in a hypothyroid state, they can go years with a normal TSH range, you guys, and get worse and worse and worse. When they are held hostage to this TSH lab test, they can continue to have symptoms, whether they're on medication or not, and never get what they need. So just remember that. So the actual thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, is synthesized and secreted by the pituitary gland. It is a pituitary hormone, not a thyroid hormone. It is just a messenger released by the pituitary gland. Remember the communicators, you guys, knocking on the door of your thyroid and saying, hey, you've got to meet some demands. What's up in there? And if the thyroid gland becomes too diseased or disabled or fails to do its job adequately, in other words, doesn't open the door from the pituitary, the TSH knocks and knocks and knocks on the door, and it continues to elevate. The message doesn't get to the thyroid gland. So if the other side here, when we're talking about Graves, if the thyroid gland gets on an exercise bike, which I love this analogy, and overproduces the thyroid hormones of Graves, the TSH lab will theoretically go too low and say that it's not knocking at all. Ugh, it's just so frustrating because this was my life. I went through this for so long, and I was just like, where was this when I was studying all of this? She came around long after I was diagnosed. So anyway, it's just really good information to understand. And we are going to go into the other ranges of free T4, free T3, and so on and so forth. Okay. This is a really great article to share with clients that think the TSH is enough and to share with their doctors. Okay. So I love that article. It's really, really good. All right. So I'm going to wrap up the guide, and I'm going to make a note here that we are ending on page 23. And I will put your calendar, when our next class is on this, but I want to pull up some labs. I'm going to stop the share for just a moment, and I'm going to pull something up for you guys if I can find it. All right. And just, any questions you guys are coming to you, just let me know what they are. Let's see. Is anybody feeling overwhelmed? That's one question. Probably have a lot of information going through your heads about this stuff. I mean, I know when I wrote this guide, I started writing it and I thought, oh my gosh, how can that's just not enough. That's not enough information. And I would go back and I would go back. It's one reason why it took me so long to write it. I just felt like, wait a minute, that's not enough for them. They need more. These coaches need to know more. That's not enough. And that's why it took me so long, because I just felt like telling you about, the TSH without telling you about the pituitary it wasn't going to do you any good to not understand. You're going to understand it. So hold on. I got a ton of labs done recently. So hold on. I'll share that with you guys so you can see. Okay. Bernadette says, I'm going to need to watch this at least once or twice again. I know it's so much, you guys. So much. But yeah, it's a 3-month program over this guide. Perfect. You could even use this as a niche, you guys. And you could just be like, oh, the thyroid's my niche. I already have a guide. All you got to do is pull it up and read from it, really. All right, here's my own personal labs that were done. So those of you, we're not going to get into the specifics of my stress, but anytime that I go under significant stress, I always go in and get a thyroid lab. I try to get an immune system lab, which I'm going to show you in a minute. I always amp up my adrenal stuff. I always try to get on the front end of care with the first sign of significant stress or even minor stress. I'm always watching out for some of this stuff. So this is my lab, dead in the middle of major, major stress. Doesn't look terrible, doesn't look great. I anticipated the antibodies to be high. They were 250 about, let me see, what are we in March? So it was first week of January, I think it was like 250. So they're up. This is a great picture for you guys to see that when someone goes under stress, antibodies elevate. Okay, antibodies will go up because of stress. My free well, there's my TSH, so it's a little higher than I'm comfortable with. I'm really much happier around 2.0. The interesting thing, though, I want to throw your way is I'm hypothyroid Hashimoto's, which means my thyroid has slowed down. But I've lost 15 pounds in the last 6 weeks. So it's not always, when people say, oh, I'm hypothyroid, that's why I'm overweight. It's not why you're overweight. I'm not overweight at all. I'm losing weight with this problem. So it's not necessarily correlated with the condition. I just want you guys to be really aware of that. So when people try to use hypothyroidism as a reason they're overweight and not to change, it is no excuse. There is always a way to figure out a way to get your body to find its optimal weight. So if you'll notice, the free T4 is pretty low here, not terrible. We're going to learn about the reference ranges and what they should look like when we go further through it. But I wanted to kind of just give you an idea of what a person with Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, looks like when the body is under stress. So I've got lowered free T4, which is storage hormone. Don't ask me to explain it because I'm going to later on. Lowered T3, which is the fuel. I expected it to be a lot lower than that, to be honest with you. Elevated thyroid peroxidase antibodies, which I thought were going to be really high, which I'm okay with this. And then you've got your reverse T3 and, of course, your TSH, which is higher than it should be. All right, so that's one lab that I wanted to show you guys. Here is the subclass IgG immune system panel. This is an overall view of how my immune system is functioning, like across the board, everything. I'm just learning about IgG, IgA, IgF subclasses and all of the levels and all that. So I don't have a lot of knowledge on this topic because I've never really dove into it before, but everything looks great. I'm in level with everything as far as I know today. Now, I may go out and do some reading on functional labs and get some input from some of my doctors and practitioners from Mindshare. But as I look at it now, it looks pretty good. So I'm happy with that. But this is me being preventative. And I don't know how many of you guys do the same thing, but for me, preventative care of what's going on with me when I'm under stress is the biggest, most important piece of making sure that on the other end of the stress that I have done minimal damage, okay? So let me see if there's any other questions. Let's see here. Mary Louise, anything worth doing is worth doing right. I agree. So let's see. This is me thinking about issues I've had for years, wondering about the health of my thyroid. Okay, so we're going to talk about that later. But if anyone is over the age, I say over the age of 35, struggling with any weight issues, struggling with, okay, so one of the indicators, which I look orange because my screen is up on an orange screen, but the outside of my eyebrows are not terrible, but this is the place, like the outer third of your eyebrows are the place to look and see how thin they're getting. It's one of the first indicators of hypothyroidism is losing the outer edges of your eyebrows. So go take a peek in the mirror, cover your eye like you'd be getting like an eye exam, and see if they're thinning out here. It's also a great way to kind of assess your clients too. If you are working with someone and they say, you notice that they have no eyebrows on the outside, that's one of the first things you can think, something's going on there with that thyroid. Sandy says, I'm an information freak and I love it. I have so many people that need this. Yeah, I know. It's just, unfortunately, there are way too many people out there with autoimmune, thyroiditis, Hashimoto's, all those problems. So, okay, yes, I go over optimal ranges. I'm going to use my own labs to explain to you guys what that looks like for most people. So one thing I encourage you to do is just kind of stay where you are with the guide right now. We're ending on page 23. Just kind of stop there and let's go over it before you try to learn it as you go through. No need to read it ahead of time because I think when you finally do go back and read it, it's going to be helpful for you to have maybe my voice in the background going, now remember this, or think about that. It may just make it, I don't know, solidified in your brain a little bit tighter. So, all right, you guys, 112. So we are partway through. I have a feeling we may go 3 sessions, maybe 4 if questions arise. And I'm going to, I need to make sure I do this for you guys too. Hold on a minute. I'm going to give you the thyroid intake form. It may already be in there, but I'm just going to put everything in one drop box for this particular training. And as we go through training in the future, what I might do is just put them in the Dropbox and load them into the mentorship group so that you guys can easily find it. Kaylee is already moving. Things are already being moved into ClickFunnels, which is where we're going to live in our forums and stuff. She's in the process, but it's a lot of information, as you can imagine. So anticipate being moved over there. I would hope in the next 3 or 4 weeks, maybe less. But just keep visiting the Facebook page, you guys. Keep your questions there. Keep reaching out to me there. Tag me in anything you got going on. And, thanks for joining today. I appreciate it. And I will put the recording out there for you when I get it done converting, probably this evening or first thing tomorrow. You're welcome. You're welcome, Kim and Stephanie. Awesome, Billy. Great. All right. Thanks, you guys. All right. See you later. Have a great rest of the day.